weather update.
All right, thanks, Jen. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Oops, wrong window.
Morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
All right, I think I got that. All right, so to get started here, kind of look at the last 7 days of rainfall. Kind of cuts off northern Minnesota there in the upper left, trying to show, like, kind of get a zoomed in images of these. This was as of 2 this morning. So there is a little bit of rain that fell in the lower peninsula this morning that isn't captured here, and also a little bit more along the Ohio Valley. But overall, like this rainfall along the front that's come in, it's kind of coming in bands. So you get areas of moderate to heavy rain, like you got through portions of central Michigan, but just north of there toward like Mount Pleasant, you got very little rain. And that's also kind of be maybe through portions of lower, as you get down to the Ohio-Indiana border, relatively drier today, and the next band is forming there now. But much of Minnesota was dry up. You can't see it all the way up in northwest Minnesota. They did get some rain, but it wasn't as widespread as they're expecting. And then the lower right, if you look toward the northeast and mid-Atlantic, I mean, just nothing for the last 7 days. So just kind of keeping that in mind. And then just kind of looking at the longer term. So this is the last 30 days. And we can see where we got those areas of like heavy rain at the end of last month down, along the Ohio River, and then in portions of like around Albany, northeastern Catskills, and portions of southern Maine, where we did okay last month, but the longer term dryness trend is still there. And I'll show that there in a second, but just last month, just how dry it was in lower Michigan, and really in much of the Great Lakes and upper Midwest. And then looking back to the last 60 days, it was a little bit wetter when you went back to August. So it's not quite as dry when you look toward Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, but still relatively dry, but also dry from the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. And you can see those really dry months starting to show up there that we had over the summer up in the Northeast, especially New Hampshire, setting their driest month ever since records began in 1895. So this morning, satellite loop kind of just showing this banding precipitation that we have along the cold front that's moving through. One going from northern Illinois into central lower Michigan, then along the Ohio River as well. And those are going to kind of keep forming as they go up and into the Northeast today, and just kind of showing that again in the radar loop. You can really see that these banding features. You get heavier showers, isolated thunderstorms within those bands, but in between them, not much at all, and that's going to be continuing as it heads up into the Northeast. So looking at today is just looking at the hot, dry, windy index here in the upper left. It was dry and breezy yesterday, those southwest winds up into the Northeast. A little bit, more today out ahead of it. The winds will be breezy. RH won't be quite as low, probably staying above, 30, 35% or so, instead of seeing some of the isolated 20s we saw yesterday. So that's going to be there. You can kind of see that in the upper right with the RH there. And then we do get the rain coming in, and that's going to be kind of the more banded, like I said. So you look at this rainfall and it looks really, really good. Overall, getting like on average a ½ inch to an inch, but it's not going to be like that. Some areas will get an inch, some will get a quarter, and some will see very little. I think most areas will get some wetting rainfall, but it's not going to be widespread like we'd like to see, because it still is convective. And then the significant fire potential here in the lower right, kind of keeping that just kind of a lower risk, just for the maybe some more IA there in the Northeast ahead of the front with those dry, breezy conditions. And then looking at Minnesota, where northwest Minnesota continues to be dry, and if you look in the RH, it's starting to get those. The winds won't be as strong as what we saw on Sunday behind the front, but still some dry and breezy northwest winds, maybe around 10 to 15 miles an hour. And RH will start to drop, get mostly around 30 to 35%, but there will be some 20s mixed in there as well, heading down to Wisconsin. As we go towards tomorrow, really not much. I don't want to show the hot, dry, windy because it doesn't show anything. So I'm just show the temperatures tomorrow, but still relatively cool behind the front from much of the upper Mississippi Valley, Great Lakes into the Northeast behind the front. and then turning drier with the northwest winds behind it. But the driest and lowest RH will probably be continuing from the mid Mississippi Valley up into Minnesota. RH could be a little bit lower today, but the winds overall will be lighter and may start to try to switch out of the south. In the Northeast, RH doesn't look that bad because we'll have the rain from yesterday alleviating the conditions somewhat, but still, we'll have those dry, winds on the backside maybe start to dry things out a bit. You can see the front on the backside kind of moving out there. For significant fire potential, just kind of hit watching northwest Minnesota and then kind of started adding it. In a lot of these areas, it's going to be more reflective of where they didn't get much rain than areas that got rain that they'll give them another couple of days than what we're showing here for tomorrow. And then as we head into Thursday, it still looks fairly dry. The RH may be coming up a little bit in that southerly flow, but it's not the most moist southerly flow, so probably keep the low fire potential out there. This area rainfall that are coming in, really not seeing it anymore. That was, I kind of looked at it today and they're showing a little bit, but it's very, very isolated showers. And it's probably going to be to the west of that. I'm not really seeing it. But in the Northeast, especially up in New England, southern Maine, dry and breezy northwest winds behind it. Given the rainfall that's anticipated, not expecting anything except really drying at this point, drying back out after the rainfall. But, if, we don't get as much rainfall or some of these areas get missed, they could be of more concern, and I'll have a better handle on that tomorrow. But that's kind of what we're looking at least for Thursday. And just looking at the 7-day precipitation and just kind of going, this is the 2-day total, the 3-day, the 5-day, and this lower right one I was supposed to put in the 7-day, but I missed it. I put in the 5-day again. But overall, what we're seeing here is, this rainfall that we get today and tonight is pretty much going to be it. There could be something coming up in Minnesota, but I think that's more towards the middle of next week if it does happen. Kind of showing some light rainfall, but just compared to what I saw yesterday, the Weather Prediction Center is backing off, and that's what I see too. And then I put an area like these question marks in the mid-Atlantic. Yesterday, they were showing a good coastal storm there. One of the models is still showing it, but most have really backed off and kind of kept to the south, although it could still form. That looks like some areas where, it could bring rainfall all the way up into New England. I feel really confident that New England is going to stay dry for the most part, and maybe right along the coast, they could see something. But I think if we get any heavier rain, it'll be in the mid-Atlantic. And there's only probably about a 30% chance of that because it looks like the coastal storm is going to develop too far south and maybe too far offshore to do any good, to get any more significant rainfall into the mid-Atlantic. Other thing I'll be watching here, and I don't have it shown here, is where you see this here on Saturday. We're going to see those increased southerly winds. They're going to increase more from what we see on Thursday. I think Saturday is going to be probably the worst day, I should say, for Minnesota, especially northwest Minnesota. Looking like we could see sustained 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, if not a little bit stronger, and maybe gusts 30 to 40 miles an hour with RH dropping to 20% or so there on Saturday. So that's something that's probably going to be of greatest concern. The winds will stay up. We'll start to increase on Friday and stay up on Sunday. But Sunday, we may start seeing a little bit of precip and the RH will come up. So I'm not sure about that, but I definitely think Saturday will be of greatest concern there. And then out to the south and east of that into, Wisconsin, Michigan, where it has been drier, aside from the rainfall they got, but still was spotty, is they are going to have some winds, but not quite as strong, and to stay fairly dry. So it'll continue to stay fairly dry there. Next week, this is what I looked at. This is what CPC put out on Sunday. The temperature outlook is pretty high confidence. On the precip in the lower right, they were trending drier for, pretty much from, the Ohio Valley into the Northeast, and especially northern New England. On the latest run, and yesterday, they backed off on this. And I can understand why, because there is quite a bit of uncertainty showing up in the models here. But it really depends. There is going to be some sort of the ridge that's been kind of present overall in the plains. It depends on how that's going to evolve. Some models have it, pushing a little bit farther west, maybe toward the Continental Divide, which overall would be good for the Northeast. Maybe not so much for Minnesota. Like some of these areas that are shown above normal here are not. Some areas are going to be drier. So it's just something to kind of watch there. But what it really wanted to show is like if I go ahead, and this is like the tale of two models here, and this is 5-day precipitation looking out through next weekend, and the issue, or actually through late next week, is up here in the upper left, this is the GFS showing quite a bit of rainfall coming to Minnesota, Wisconsin, upper Michigan, but most of lower Michigan stays dry, but it's got some sort of coastal storm that develops in the Northeast, which would be really nice. I'm not so sure that's going to happen. It's the only one that's really showing that we might get some rain. I don't know if it's going to be that much. But if you look in the lower
Hey, good morning,
right,
everybody.
you have
I
the
have top of the
European
hour,
model,
no matter what time
and this
zone
is just
you're
another
in.
example
So
where
we will
the
get
trough has ended
started
up
with
being a little
the
bit farther east,
weekly
and
GAC
originally
weather
a little bit
call.
farther east as well,
And
maybe
I'll
more
turn it over to
just east of the
Jim
Mississippi
Wallman
River. If that
for weather.
happens, maybe Minnesota gets some rainfall, but maybe not as widespread. But the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic stay dry, pretty dry in that scenario, especially in lower Michigan as well into the Ohio Valley. So that's would be a bigger concern. So there is potential that behind this storm that we see tonight and today and tonight, that we may stay dry for the next 10 to 12 days. And that will coincide with more leaf drop as well. So especially with the rain that we get today could enhance some of the leaf drop, and again in the winds, also on the backside in the Northeast, and just watching Minnesota the next few days. So just kind of summarize, short term, just those breezy winds in New England before the rain arrives. Like most areas, I think in the Northeast will do well. Generally get some wetting rain, but amounts vary from a quarter inch to 1.25 inches. Central and Western Pennsylvania, I think I have a little bit more confidence that they're going to actually see that rain, maybe around an inch, just because of where that next band is developing right now. I think that's a pretty high confidence there that they will see more rain. But as you get farther north and east, it really depends on where those bands set up. And then the drying returns to Minnesota and the Great Lakes tomorrow and beyond, with some areas of low RH into the 20s. Longer term, just watching that dry weather returns to the Northeast and just watching to see if we get that mid-Atlantic coastal storm. But like I said, that's only probably about 30% chance right now. And then breezy south winds from western Minnesota through the weekend, Friday through the weekend, Saturday being the biggest concern. And that long-term uncertainty, if, that latter model, it pans out, then much of the, Michigan into the Ohio Valley and the Northeast will stay dry after this rain event for the next 10 to 12 days. End the report pending any questions.
Thanks,